Hey, Kevin.
Hi Mike, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Good. Been a good week. Yes. Busy, but good week. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so today's topic, we're talking about how to start small and aim big. And you wanted to dig into how, from an entrepreneur perspective, actually a quote that I quite often use to other people, which is something you said to me before, is if you don't know where you're going, don't complain about where you end up. And
Exactly.
I just
Absolutely.
I just, yeah, I think that's very true. And I see it in all walks of life, whether it's marketing, personal, professional, just that actually, I think it's really clear. And I think it'd just be good maybe to hear in your words a bit more, just how you see that as a plan and the process that you need to go to. And then we can dig in a bit more depth in that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yes, I mean, I've kind of had it for years. I think it came from, I think many years ago, I read The Seven Habits by Covey,
Yeah.
and it stuck with me. And one of the things that stuck with me is, start with the end in mind. On the grounds that if you don't, you'll be very busy. But back to your point, don't complain when you find you're somewhere that you didn't intend to be.
Yeah.
Might be an enjoyable journey, but it won't be the outcome that you expected. So I think starting with the end in mind is critical.
Yeah. And I don't know many people that aren't busy, but
Exactly.
you can fill your time quite easily, but everyone has 24 hours in a day, and it's how do you take that forward to where you really want to be, as opposed to there's always stuff to do. It's very rare that you're twiddling your thumbs and think, what am I going to do right now? So,
Absolutely. We can
yeah,
always be busy, but it's busy doing the right things, which leads me on to the next point of having a kind of a 3-year goal of where you're going and some targets is critical. But
yeah,
then what you've got to do obviously is, I'm not a sailor, but I believe when you're sailing, the wind blows in all sorts of directions. So you
yep,
have to tack towards the end game. So if you looked at, in plan view, a ship sailing towards a target, it wouldn't go in a straight line. It would
yep,
go in a kind of like a wiggly line based upon where the wind's blowing it. And the same thing with any of our businesses that we run. It hardly ever, I don't think it's ever ended up you follow the exact plan that you wrote down, but you want I think the differentiator is the people that hit their target are those that have a clear target, and every week, every day, every month, you're working out, am I making progress?
yeah. Yeah, it's the whole, I love the book, Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? For that reason, that they know exactly where they're going.
Yeah,
They're aiming for a gold medal, which means, I think in their case, it's how do you get a world record? Because
yeah,
if you a world record time, you're pretty confident that there's a very good chance you're going to get a gold medal. And then you work backwards. If what you're doing is taking you towards that target, do it. If it's not, then you're wasting your time. It's very simple. Um,
I
what,
suspect I suspect runners do the same thing. If you're a Olympic athlete and you're going to run 100 meters, every time you shave a millisecond consistently off your time is another millisecond towards a world record.
yeah.
Keep going.
Are there any tips or techniques you have on? I feel like in the past for myself, I've always been guilty too much of thinking too far ahead and
Right.
not too much about the day-to-day actions that's going to get me there. Um, and I feel like to a certain extent, as a team and a company, you need people that can think on different levels, but they've got clear alignment behind what they're doing. So you have someone that may be even like a day-to-day project manager of how are we just taking things forward in the right way possible
Yeah.
right now, but then you've got someone that's bigger picture thinking, that's ensuring they're pulling towards that overall vision and vice versa. But at an individual level, if you've got any tips behind how do you maybe prioritize your actions on a day-to-day basis that is working towards the bigger picture of where you really want to get to?
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. I think people have got different techniques that they use. So there's all sorts of tools that you can read on the internet about. I forgot which is the one that a lot of the Supper Club members use. OKRs. Yeah, people use
Right.
OKRs. I think Google have used OKRs very successfully. There's the another one about, I think it's called the 6 disciplines of execution. There's all sorts of different things you can use. What I kind of like is I've got a step-by-step guide, and
Yep.
maybe I'll just like run through the steps
Yeah, definitely
and
do that.
kind of like unpack the steps.
Yep.
So I think for anyone, it starts with, think about why you exist as a business. So I think the owner's got to work out what's the, call it a mission, call it a raison d'etre, call it what you like. You've got to know why you exist, because that has to be, I think people call that kind of like, your North Star. You have to know why you're there. Because without that, the vision, it's very hard for people to relate or buy into where you're going.
Yep.
I think you start with why. Simon Sinek's, brilliant 3 circles. If people haven't looked at that, it's probably the best thing I've ever seen about organizational kind of like design and about behavior. You start with why, and then you work out the rest.
I use that for marketing all the time. If you can't tell me why you're doing something, I don't care about tactically how you're going to do it.
Exactly right. Yeah, the why, how, and the what. It was a brilliant piece of work, simplified into 3 basic questions. Then defining a smart vision. So have a smart vision that's it's far enough out such that it's ambitious and you don't get there next week, but close enough such that it's realistic. I think having a 20-year goal for me is like a bit pointless, especially given I'm 56. So, having a 3-year target is probably a good idea. A 3-year goal, I would say, and make it smart.
That makes sense. And then you can, in 3 years' time, hopefully you'll get there and then see what the next 3 years look like. But I think always looking 3 years out does make sense to me. Otherwise, it's quite hard to say. Certainly in the world we're in, it's so fast paced. What does 5-10 years look like?
Exactly. I mean, it used to be back in my strategy days, we would do a kind of 5 and 10 year vision for an organization. The world's changing too much now. But there's a school of thought that says, well, you can't have a 3-year vision. It's impossible. It's like, well, it's not impossible at all. You have a 3-year vision. If the world, as it has done, changes dramatically, sure, you'll need to review that. But the world doesn't normally change dramatically. The world changes incrementally, normally.
Yeah, exactly. I was on a podcast myself yesterday, and one thing I said was in the early days, and I think this might be a life cycle of an entrepreneur, but I was talking about how I used to be very decisive. And I feel like at heart I still am, but I realized that after a certain period of time, that if I'm just making very quick decisions, back then I was happy to go in the wrong direction and learn from it and then adjust course and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And I would prefer that to standing still, because I feel like going backwards, actually, I'm going to get somewhere, whereas doing nothing, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I still believe that today, but I think the big thing is how do you take a team along with you? And I don't want to go too off course for the topic of this. It's probably another podcast in itself, but I think how do you understand where you want to go, and that alignment with the team is absolutely crucial.
I mean, I think, it does play into this, which is, as the owner, you start out with why, you define a smart vision, and you get people to buy into it. Cotter did a very, very simple, very clever piece of work many years ago, which was there's a 7-step change process. Anyone that's trying to take a team with them, you'd be wise to look at Cotter's work on the 7 steps of change. I think he might have adapted it now to be the 8 steps of change. Right. But it talks exactly about that. You need to know where you're going. You need to get people to buy into it. Yep. You need to build a coalition of people with a common sense of purpose. You need to make some quick wins, and you need to keep reviewing where you are. The basic fundamentals of bringing a team with you really haven't changed that much.
Yep.
Because human beings haven't changed that much in the last kind of 50 or 100 years.
Yeah, and I think the trick is finding that right balance between being decisive but not kind of telling everyone everything that you need to do. You don't want to be micromanaging it. But you still, ideas by committee, or if you're too far down the line, I feel like that just ends up to everything gets diluted. So it's like you need strong leadership, but at the same time, you need to get everyone involved and bought into that idea as well. So that there's a tricky balance, I would say, behind that.
I mean, we should definitely do another podcast on leadership and management.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? Because I suspect a lot of entrepreneurs in their mind don't differentiate that. Because you start out running your own business with 1, 2, or 3 of you, and there isn't any delineation of role. You're all getting on with it. And then before you know it, you're like 10 or 15 people, and the owner-manager has to become the leader. And I'm sure in football, there's probably a very similar analogy of some kind.
Yeah, there would be. And I think, to me, the key is how as a leader can you create more leaders? And the football analogy would be you have a manager and you have a captain and you have other people that take responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's not all down to one person. But yeah, let's save that one for another day.
And then the next thing, so we've got basically start out with why. Step one. Step two, define a smart vision. Step three, understand where you are today in detail.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where you are today. How on earth are you going to write a plan to get to where you need to be?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Because otherwise the plan's not grounded in reality. And again, people don't spend time doing a situation analysis. Mm-hmm. What's the current situation? Where are we? So you've got why, then you've got vision, then you've got where are you today in detail, and then you can build a plan.
Yep.
How do I get from where I am today to where I need to be in the future? Set some milestones. And once you've got some milestones, then you need to obviously get a small group around you, more experienced advisors ideally, to help with shortcuts, tell you where your blind spots are. So this is more for the leader than it is for the team. But to execute on that plan, you need someone that's basically your kind of like grit in the oyster, the person that can challenge you from the side to say every month or every quarter, okay, where are we on the plan? How are things going? Because lots of entrepreneurs have the shiny new thing syndrome.
Yeah.
A vast majority have the shiny new thing syndrome. So within a month, the entrepreneur's gone off and found 20 other things they'd like to do instead. Mm-hmm. Well, someone's got to hold them to account to say, well, you know why you exist. You've got a plan of where you're going. You've told the team and engaged them. They're all agreed. You've built some milestones. And now this month you appear to have gone off and built some new product. What on earth's that about?
Yeah, I found that actually my approach, I feel like, has got more focused as I've added more experience. So I've
seen it in you, Kevin. You've got much more focused.
And what I mean is by that is I can see as we're growing, what is it that we're really doing well? How do we do more of that? How do we focus on that? And it's not so much here's a distraction, here's a new thing. We are in a fast-paced world. I can't ignore the market, etc. But I feel like actually in a lot of cases it's how do we double down? How do we get more granular, more focused?
Yeah.
As opposed to the opposite of let's start doing X, Y, and Z because it would be fun, cool, etc. Like that just doesn't excite me so much.
And I can see it in you as a leader, whereby you're much more outward facing now. You know, sure, you've still got to do client service work, and you still have to be involved in client projects, but much more you're looking at where's the market going, what are the trends, much more on thought leadership. Because that tacking we talked about at the beginning, if you're a boat, the vision doesn't change, but market conditions will either force you or give an opportunity to tack towards that outcome in a different way. You might find a faster route. You might find blockages in the way. And that's really important.
You need to be able to adapt when it's right to adapt, but you also need to have quite a blinkered view at some times of just actually I'm not going to even worry about anything else right now because this is what we're working on. Let's make it work and happen and not get distracted. So again, I think it's a balance.
It is a balance. And I think if you look at any research about the traits of very successful, highly successful people, they say no to like 90% of things they get asked.
Yeah, I love the Warren Buffett tip of his calendar. You can't book a meeting with him if it's more than 2 days away because he doesn't know what he's going to be doing at that point in time and if it's important enough. And I think that's actually a really good tip. Okay, so we got to step 4, build a plan. So the final step 5.
Yeah, step 5 was about, so just to kind of like, recap, is say why, vision, where are you today? Build the plan, put milestones in place, and then have some sort of cadence where you review what progress you're making against those milestones towards that vision. Step 5 for me, and this is definitely for the kind of like the owner, the entrepreneur, the founder, the CEO, is you do need people around you. You can't be a lone hero. Mm-hmm. So you need people around you that are advisors that have got complementary skills and experience. Ideally, you want to be learning from people that have either trodden that path before or have 10 or 15 years more experience of doing something similar but different. that you can use to hold you to account.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's learning from the mistakes, but the other thing is everything changes in time. So I can't do what you did 10
No.
years ago. And I've also found I can't do what I did 5 years ago. Like what I used to do that works, I can't just say, oh, we were doing really well back then, let's just do that again. Because the market changes, people catch up. So I think it's just having someone that can be there as a sounding board to say, this is my advice, this is what I did, maybe this is what I would do now. But ultimately, as the leader and the entrepreneur, you're always accountable for your own actions. So it's kind of, how do you collect the best information from advisors and even podcast books, any information that you can get.
Exactly.
But then obviously, ultimately, it's you that lives and dies by those decisions. So you have to kind of take that on board. And
I think that's a really important point, Kevin. I think that's where mistakes get made, is that, entrepreneurs, CEOs that say, well, you gave me the advice, I followed it, and it didn't work. It's like, well, that's a bit naive. Someone from the outside isn't running your business. So the idea that the best chief execs I've ever met they've normally got 3 or 4 people around them, and they'll seek counsel from experienced senior people, and then they'll take 3 or 4 inputs, and they'll think about it, and then they'll decide what's the best course of action for our company, given our situation currently, based on some of the advice I've received.
Yeah.
That's a smart thing to do. But you wouldn't say, well, Mrs. Advisor, what should I do? And then just like verbatim implement what they do. Or even worse, say to the advisor, well, your experience is 10 years out of date. It's irrelevant.
I think
it's an advisor.
I actually think that comes with experience as well, because in the early days of running a company, we had an advisor who used to frustrate me because I was just like, I don't know what to do, just tell me. And now I'm the opposite of, I love accountability. Like, people look at me weirdly when I say, if everything goes wrong and it's all my fault, I'm okay with that. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. And I'm more than happy to say, let's go down this route. If it doesn't work, just blame me. That's fine. I really don't have a problem with that whatsoever. But I feel like, as an entrepreneur and business owner, I feel like that's actually a good trait. If you're willing to put your name on it and put everything behind making it happen, and if it still doesn't succeed, as long as you've given it your best, then you've got nothing to feel ashamed about. It's just you've got to try something and go for it, and you don't always know what that outcome's going to be, but I feel like you have to be quite strong in your belief behind it, and that does mean that you take advice, but it also means that you're willing to put your name on it. And if it goes wrong, then no excuses. You just move on to.
I've made some huge mistakes in the past.
Yeah.
And I've collected around me some brilliant advisors and some really, really not so good advisors.
Yep.
But I've always lived by the mistakes and said, well, I'm accountable. It's no one else's fault.
Yeah.
No one else's mistake. It's mine. Yeah. I chose a direction. I chose to do something. Yeah, the fact that I may have had brilliant advice from someone or poor advice from someone, well, that's down to my judgment.
Yeah, I heard someone say recently, it's kind of like, if you listen to all advice, you just come full circle.
Correct.
So actually, you've got to filter that advice. What's the advice where you think you're mad? I'm going to ignore you. What's the advice where you think this is useful? I'm going to take it on board.
Yeah.
And it's your decision, and it's no one else's fault.
And advice is situational. I think that, the relationship that we've got now, we're business colleagues, but we're also friends. And it's taken 3 or 4 years, I guess. Mm-hmm. But the kind of advice you seek from me is very different now than it was kind of 3 years ago. I think our relationship's much better now because you've obviously worked out when's it best to ask Mike what his view is.
Yeah, true.
Other people that you talk to for all sorts of different topics. Where you say, well, this person's better for this context. Yeah,
that's true. It could be if I've got, I don't know, maybe a reason to take another agency owner out for lunch or something like that, to ask them questions.
Exactly.
versus actually this is something that I know Mike's done before. I'll give him the phone. So yeah.
If you're negotiating something, you will often come to me and say, try and negotiate this deal. This is where we are in the process. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
I've got lots of negotiation experience and we've got different ways of seeing things. But you wouldn't come to me and say, Mike, I've got a marketing plan. What do you think? Because Mike isn't a marketer.
Yeah.
I want to give a view.
Exactly. I think having advisors for different topics, and certainly, and again, as an entrepreneur, there's the things that you do that you don't get into the job typically for doing HR, finance, sales to a certain extent as well. Like these are things that you have to learn, and not normally one person that can tell you everything about that. I mean, you're probably a good example of someone that's had to learn all of that, but it doesn't make you the HR expert. It means you can tell me what you did, and I probably still need to speak to the HR expert. And but I think surrounding yourself with trusted advisors in different subject matter areas of expertise is really important.
I mean, I think one thing, if you're looking for an advisor, the thing I'd say to anyone looking for an advisor is you need to find someone that's not going to tell you the answer, but also isn't going to irritate you by just asking you lots of questions, because that doesn't help either. Yeah. So it's that kind of like someone that's got a bit more humility. And the second thing they need to do is they need to be very good at signposting. So although I'm not an HR expert, I know people who are.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if you've got that kind of problem, this is what I saw before, but you want to go and talk to Liz, for example. I think Liz is brilliant. I've pointed other colleagues and clients at Liz to say, if you've got this problem in HR, go and talk to Liz. She's brilliant. And it's that ability to be able to, I think some advisors get in their head that they are all powerful or all knowing, and they daren't let anyone else talk to the chief exec or the entrepreneur for fear they'll lose control. It's like, well, that's just a wrong advisor.
I just think that's really dangerous. You need to know where the boundaries are on what your levels of expertise are. And again, it doesn't mean that you can't advise on areas like finance and HR as a good example, but it means you need to know where you can draw the line and say, okay, I'm out of my depth now. This isn't my.
Exactly.
I'm
very adept at cash flow management.
Yeah.
So because we do it together, and you've seen what I do, but you'd never say to me, Mike, what do you think our tax position should be? Because I'd be like, I have no idea at all, Kevin. I haven't got a clue. Let's go and talk to a tax expert on this.
Exactly. So I think one thing, just to kind of wrap things up on this, would be we definitely completely agree on having experts at different levels and different areas. I think it's more, how do you keep things on track? So once you've got that big vision and you've got the team aligned, how do you then make sure that you're keeping things on track? How often do you review things, and when and why do you need to adjust course?
So my view on that, based on kind of years of experience of doing this, is for the big stuff, i.e. where you're going as a company, then absolutely a monthly review. Mm-hmm. The cadence should be, there's a monthly review, call it a board meeting, call it a management team meeting, call it a check-in with your advisor, whatever it is, a review against, this is the plan, here are the milestones, here were the targets, how are we doing? Has the market changed? Mm-hmm. Every quarter, you need a bigger review, which is much more market facing.
Yeah.
What do we see coming up in the marketplace? Where do we think the risks might be? What are the early indications that there are kind of like, tough wins ahead? So I think those are the two big things for me, is for the big stuff, the vision-based stuff, monthly cadence, absolutely in the diary every month, which is an accountability meeting. Where are we on track? And then a quarterly, bit more of a step back. Does the plan actually is it still valid? Because have the market conditions changed dramatically on us?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I would imagine normally that would start kind of quite financially based in terms of performance.
Correct.
And drill down into the reason you're seeing those numbers. So it could be you've had a bad month, but there's a good reason for it, and that's going to recover further down the line because you're playing a long game, etc. But I feel like if you don't start with the numbers, you can almost hide behind the reality, if that makes sense. And if you start with the numbers, these are almost like hard, cold facts of this is what's really happened.
So a critical thing for me, which is around those numbers, in that monthly review, you need to have lead and lag indicators. We talk about this a lot. You know, the lag indicator absolutely is the numbers, the rational, the outputs.
Yeah.
So the profit, the sales growth, you know, whatever the output is that you're looking for. But you must also have, for every output indicator, you need really 2 or 3 lead indicators, which are the input measures. About, we need to measure these things because they are going to tell us broadly if these things are on track, the outcome is likely to be on track as well.
Yeah.
And that piece is often missing in people's plans as well, is the misunderstanding or the lack of knowledge about the importance of lead and lag indicators. And with your clients, Kevin, you know, in Resignal, you do this all the time, is that, you know, what's their end goal? What's their business goal? So I want to increase conversion rates of my e-commerce site.
Yeah.
Well, you know, because of your deep expertise in the area, well, there's 2 or 3 key things that are going to make a big difference in your business to that lag indicator. And those are your leads that you want to measure.
There's a lot of comparisons just with business strategy and overall digital marketing strategy that I've definitely brought into how we work. And
yeah.
I think just I'm definitely one for keeping things as simple as possible. So what's the easiest way to hit your target? As a business perspective, that's definitely something I would look at. We want to get from X to Y. What's the easiest way to achieve it? And likewise, from let's say it's an e-commerce brand, the easiest way to increase more sales is to get more potential customers on the website, which sounds obvious, but sometimes people can overcomplicate this with
exactly
very tactical pieces that may not deliver upon that. So
it's like the old classic link building. Yeah, we've been asked before within Resignal by clients, just, you know, bring me an extra X links per month.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, okay, why?
It goes back to that Simon Sinek thing of that links might be the answer, but actually, are you asking the right question in the first place? And quite often, I feel like if that question is, can we drive more sales, then the answer might vary. So it's taking it back to that level of
what's the core problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah, what do you really want to hold us account to in terms of the goal and the metric? And we'll do what's best to hit that goal and metric, but it might not necessarily be what you're asking us for.
So what do you think, Kevin? What have you picked up? What's your kind of summary for our listeners about this episode?
I think a lot of it is being kind of adaptable. I think you still need a level of being able to react and be agile within the market, but from the place of you do know where you're going, you know what the targets are, and again, this can relate to marketing. You've done a forecast, you know where you want to be at the end of the year. Stuff will change during that year, especially for the year of 2020. And I think the key is though that you readjust, you look at where you're going, what's realistic, and you make adjustments along the way. And then I think your point around just having the right advisors at different levels, I think is really important. So the marketing analogy might be, you probably wouldn't ask your technical SEO expert to run your paid search ads or create a creative TV ad. You need specialists in different areas, and you need to pull them together in order to make informed decisions. And if you're an entrepreneur, again, it's surrounding yourself with advisors based upon the specific challenges that you have at that point in time. I think that's really important. And then, kind of the final point we were talking about is just the measurement behind it. How do you not just have this big vision that you think is great, you're going to work to as a 3-year plan? It's not a let's see where we are in 3 years. It's let's see where we are next month against that 3-year plan. And then you should be holding yourself to account. In 1 month's time, it's not a 3-year plan. It's a 2-year, 11-month plan. How do you keep moving yourself forward against that and be strict with where you are against where you should be?
Very good. Thanks, Kevin. As always, it was great fun.
Yep.
Look forward to the next one. All right.
Thanks, mate.
See you soon. Cheers. Bye.